Welcome back. So, I like to keep it 100. I've already filmed this video. I already did this video and I exported it, and the sound on the actual this thing video did not play. So it is just an hour or so of me just speaking into the ether. So, I've already had my meltdown. I have calmed down and we're here. We're here. All right. So I had this long intro, framing everything, contextualizing everything. We're not doing that. We're not doing any of that because this video will not exist if I do not get into it right now.
With that, Mr. J, you may proceed, sir.
Thank you.
Random, but this is my first time noticing this. That thing can swivel. That is interesting. I have never seen a podium swivel like that, but okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, what the evidence in this case is going to show you is that this defendant zipped Jorge George Torres shot in a suitcase. She was able to do this because at the time of his death, he only weighed 103 pounds. And she did this with the malicious intent to punish him. And then she went up to sleep and left him to take his final breaths on this earth alone. How many breaths those were, we don't know.
Now, me, myself, personally, I would have tried to start at the podium. That is the better, stronger move from a public speaking standpoint. Especially when you want them to hear the clearest facts possible. They need to be at that mic, you give them the details, and then you go up to them when you want to further elaborate. I'm probably going to bring this up a lot, but for both of them, I really don't like how they don't use the mic properly. And when you first start, you need them to hear you. You need to start. When you are telling that narrative, you need to be at that mic, then you go up to them and do whatever you want to afterwards. But I can already see shady cameraman came to play. I bet you they gave this person a raise, as they should. Already when you hear this shady line of how many breaths he took alone, we do not know. And I don't mean shady as in bad. I mean, it's just like such a cold line that is absolutely accurate. And you should zoom in on her. And people are going to say, oh, why are they looking at her so much? I mean, they did the same thing in the Karen Reed trial. If they don't know where to place the camera, they are going to place it on her. And I have no issue with that. That is just how media trials work in these days. Is it fair? Yeah, just don't murder people.
The evidence is going to show that it was at least for about 15 minutes, because there's going to be two videos, that the defendant herself took of this event. The evidence is going to show George Torres is dead because in this defendant's judgment, he deserved it. And out of a conscious disregard for whether he lived or died, you will see and hear these videos. What I expect you will hear from a video that began at 11:12 p.m., 45 seconds.
See how much clearer that is? See how much everyone can hear? And I'm sure in the courtroom it's different, especially it doesn't seem like it's a very large courtroom, but people like clarity. And when you're giving them very difficult things to hear, they don't really want you all up in their face. You have to use proxemics wisely. You have to go to that podium, do all the harsh, bad things up here, which he's about to do when he reads out the transcript of this video, and then you go up to them with the softer things that you want them to know. Lawyers just like to roam aimlessly in front of the jury, moving side to side, because movement does keep the jury engaged, but it needs to be intentional movement and it needs to have purpose. Wandering aimlessly just makes people want to tune out. But when you move with intention, and you say, over here, we're talking about this point, and now that we're moving to a different point, I'm going to walk over here. And now that we're moving to a different point, I'm going to walk over here. That way you are compartmentalizing. The jury can follow you from point to point, and you can reference back to where you just moved, and thus you can tie it all together with movement and with words. However, when you're in the middle of one point and you're just walking back and forth, pacing back and forth, that's making me anxious too. Like, do you want me to believe you, or do you want me to feel tense with you? And I know this is like very nitpicky here, and I'm not picking at Mr. J in this instance. It's just like a lawyer thing in general. Y'all just chill out.
On February 23rd, 2020, in Orange County, Florida, is a suitcase on the ground, face down, with the zippers facing the floor. You will hear, "Sarah," the defendant will say, "for everything you've done to me." Sarah, "for everything you've done to me." Sarah, "fuck you." And then the defendant laughs. Sarah, "fuck you." And the defendant laughs. Sarah, "stupid." Sarah, "that's my name. Don't wear it out." Sarah, "I can't fucking breathe, baby. Seriously." "Yeah, that's what you do when you choke me." Sarah, Sarah, Sarah. The defendant laughs again. Sarah, "I can't breathe, babe." She laughs again. "That's on you." Sarah, "I can't breathe." She laughs again. Unintelligible words. And I would submit the evidence is going to show, because of the intoxication from alcohol, is the next thing she says. Sarah, 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 "I can't breathe, baby. That's what I feel like when you cheat on me." Sarah, "fuck you." "I can't fucking breathe, Sarah. You should probably shut the fuck up." Sarah, "shh," is the last thing you will hear the defendant say to Mr. Torres as he is face down, zipped shut, in a suitcase.
That never gets easier to hear, even when he's reading it. Just, wow. I try to keep a tally. I counted 18, maybe 19 times he said her name in both of those videos, which both of those videos combined is still less than 2.5 minutes. In 2.5 minutes, he said her name, pleading 18 times. So we can only imagine what he said for potentially hours that he was in there. I'm truly hoping he died within the first hour. I don't know, and hopefully we'll find that out from the Emmy, but in 2.5 minutes, 18 to 19 times. And she wants us to believe she didn't think he was panicky, that she thought he was okay. How do you go to sleep when someone is begging constantly? And imagine when she first flipped him over. I'm sure he thought there was hope, right? I'm finally right side up. Maybe she'll let me out. So let me say her name 1,000,000 more times. Let me apologize. Let me say whatever I need to say to hopefully get her to feel something, feel anything for my humanity. Remember anything that we have done together in good, positive, whatever. And no, she left him there and went to sleep. And as she is trying to say now, if she died, she died. Like, she always has to victimize herself. And now my comments, because I've already done this before, are not going to be linear, and they may be all over the place, and so they may also be repetitive, but it is what it is. So, just wow. I also like that he read it and he didn't play the video, because Sarah's words and her presentation are going to be crucial in all of this. Because she's going to get on the stand with that stupid little age regression voice and try to play this little innocent princess that's never done anything wrong in her life and has only been a victim of society, of the world, and more than anything of George Torres. And that's what she's going to portray herself as. So it's good that he first reads her words so they just get a context, they get the image of who she is, and they get to see the words attached to that face. If they had played her voice now, it would have already like painted a picture, but by the time we get to her testimony, we might have forgotten it. So it's kind of this build up. We know that we heard her on the 911 call. We know that we will hear her on the interrogation video when they finally play that in trial, which I wonder, that itself might take a whole day. And then they will have the reveal of what she actually said. That's the smartest goal if you just work your way up to who she actually is as a person. That raw inner self. I'm sorry, when you're intoxicated, it does not, and like it does change your behavior, but it does not change who you are as a person. It brings out maybe certain parts that you had repressed, maybe certain parts you didn't know were there, but they're there. It doesn't give you attributes that didn't already exist in you. And since you were drunk constantly, that was the state you were in most of the time. So now you want us to see you as something, another just fabrication of reality, instead of actually accepting any responsibility or accountability for what you've done or the behaviors you've exhibited or anything. She's now finally switched to saying, oh yeah, I did kill him, but that's only because he made me kill him. It was accidentally on purpose. At no point does she actually take responsibility for anything. Even when she's saying, yes, now I did it, but it's because he had two little fingers out. When I tell you the first time I heard that was the overt act, I lost my absolute mind. Two little fingers. And that's why she left him in there and then went to sleep. And if he got out, she died, then she died. Okay, I'm stuck on this. We're gonna move forward.
That, again, began at 11:12:45 and lasts just over 2 minutes. At 11:23 and 3 seconds p.m., there's a second 22-second video, and it's the defendant zooming in on the suitcase. And all you hear during this 22 seconds, after he's been in this suitcase since at least 11:12 p.m., is one more time, Sarah.
And I think that second video goes a little underlooked, and that's probably because we just haven't seen it much. Is underlooked the right term? Overlooked? I don't know. People aren't looking at it. You're not looking at it enough. Because she zooms in on the suitcase. That has its own intention in itself. The first video is just her laughing drunkenly, taunting, like just pointing the camera at him and just being a horrible, evil person. And then 11 minutes later, she is still this horrible, evil person and decides to film again because she didn't get enough in that first video. And she didn't get enough because now he's flipped over and propped up and placed at a different side of the room pretty much. And so that's a new funny thing for her. So she has to zoom in on it to make sure you see the new position that it is in and why this new position is funny and hilarious because it is different than the prior position. I know I'm probably stretching that, but I don't like the zoom in that also shows a little extra effort put in to do that. You don't just accidentally zoom in. I mean, you can, but she didn't.
How did we get to this point where 103-pound George Torres gets put into this suitcase, left to die?
See, now this is more effective to me. This is exactly what I'm talking about. You have the hard stuff on the podium, and then you decompress coming towards the jury. You kind of have to train the jury like that to, you're not afraid of me. I'm the good guy here to tell you the truth, and I'm here to bring you along. That podium, that's what's scary. Because when I have to go to that podium, you're going to hear some real shit. So when I'm talking to you face to face, we're here. It's all cool. But when I go back there, that means ears up, eyes peeled, listen.
Well, the next morning, the defendant wakes up, late morning, perhaps early afternoon, somewhere in this time range. several hours later. And she goes downstairs, and she doesn't see George anywhere, Mr. Torres, and eventually realizes, oh my God, he's in a suitcase. The first thing she does after taking him out, and I believe you will hear a description by the defendant saying, he took his little legs out. At some point she makes that statement.
She sure did, and it sounds so weird. She does those little slip-ups a lot that kind of show how she really feels about him, and the indifference or belittlement or just all of it. Because when she's in front of the police, he's this giant monster who can ragdoll throw her across the room. But in casual conversation, it's his little legs. 2 of his little fingers were hanging out. He's 103 pounds, probably the same height she is. I do not think she really saw him as a threat, personally. Not like a threat, because she wouldn't have kept doing what she did and clawing him up and then telling on him in front of other people if she were actually as afraid of him as she tells the police and tells everyone in power when it benefits her. So Mr. J is going to keep doing it, but I like it. He's going to keep harping on the fact that he was 103 pounds. 103 pounds. And yes, that does matter. Why? Because let's address it. Yes, if you are smaller, you can absolutely be abusive. If you are a smaller male, you can absolutely still be stronger than a woman of similar size, and you can still be abusive. We got that, right? We know that possibility exists, and that does exist in different situations. We also have to look at each situation for what it is. This is not that situation, especially from all the evidence that we've seen, all the footage that we've seen. They both went at it back and forth. Everyone always says they gave as good as they got. That is the most toxic, horrifying relationship I've ever heard of, but it sounds pretty on par. So when she makes these little side comments of his little legs, little fingers, I believe that's how she viewed it. And I believe that's how she was so aggressive, so comfortably towards him of, oh, you're just a little man. You're going to hit a woman. Well, what if I did this? What if I did that? Now we're really brawling back and forth. And, oh, no, you actually hit me. Now I'm calling the police. Of course, I'm projecting and making a lot of assumptions in there, too. I did make this disclaimer before when I did this video before these are all my opinions, right? I'm coming on this channel with no authority. I am just giving you my opinions and how I see situations and telling you what I know.
And tries to resuscitate him. Hears gurgling as she presses down on his 103-pound chest, forcing whatever air was trapped in there out and gurgling. Then the next thing she does is she doesn't call 911. She calls Brian Boone. And who's Brian Boone? Well, Brian Boone is her ex-husband. They share a child in common. And this date, February 24th, 2020, is a Monday. A normal work day for most people. School day for their child that they share in common. But after they got divorced, the arrangement was every other weekend, they'll co-parent. And that weekend included Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So it's that 3 schedule. And then Mondays and Tuesdays, their child would be her responsibility. And Wednesdays and Thursdays, their child would be Mr. Brian Boone's responsibility. So February 23rd, 2020 was a Sunday. And now we've led into Monday, February 24th, 2020. Mr. Boone had been trying actually to contact the defendant several times that morning.
Yes, Mr. J, point her out. Luckily, she's flanked by 2 men, so the jury can absolutely tell who the defendant is. But it's always good to remind them and just instill in them that thing right there, that one. She did this. Just so we are clear, She is the murderer and a bad mother. I'm about to read you down. Imagine, let's just zoom out right now. Imagine you're the jury hearing all of this for the first time. He's probably not even 10 minutes into his opening. And there is just so much to unpack. So much that they have to take in. And I don't know, this just makes me feel a little uncomfortable that the big ass cardboard box in the back with the suitcase in it is just eerily put on display. I'm like, y'all couldn't hide that behind a table, put it around back or nothing. No, you wanted it out in the open so that this ominous box just sticks in their minds until you finally decide to open it. I'm sure there's some irony there. I don't want to tease into it. But I did have a professor one time for a free speech class that he was a very successful lawyer and he was all about drama. Love that man. He needed a dummy body to show gruesome injuries in one trial. He said he went down to wherever he gets his props from and says, I want the rustiest, squeakiest, oldest little stand so that when I wheel that dummy body in, it creaks and it makes all of this noise that creates this drama, sets this scene, creates a tone. Everything in this courtroom is sending a message to the jury, and they take in all of these messages subliminally, intentionally, and unintentionally. I hope that the cardboard box there was an intentional decision because also it's on this metal thing and it's off kilter. It just makes me uneasy personally, and I hope it makes everyone uneasy in that courtroom. I know it doesn't bother Sarah whatsoever. It should, though.
Because he just wanted to confirm she was going to get their child after school that day. And there had been a history of reliability issues on that issue on her part. So you will see in the phone record, he calls her and calls her and calls her. And then she finally calls him back instead of calling 911. And being the nice co-parent that he is, he comes over. It's a short drive, about 10 minutes. And as she's explaining to him what the heck is going on, he peeks in through the front door of her townhouse, which allows you a view all the way to the back sliding glass door. You're going to see that her kitchen is off to the right, but there's a doorway that you can see all the way through. And on the back side of the kitchen and the breakfast room area, there's the tables and stuff. There's also some blue legs sticking out in view. Brian Boone says, check please. You need to call 911.
That is so... I don't know where that word choice came from. Check, please. Honestly, I would believe that Brian said, check, please, when he saw the body more than I would believe absolutely anything Sarah has said regarding the story. That is the most believable thing I heard that could happen on that day. Check, please, because what is happening? You call me over here after I have to call you saying, are you going to decide to be a mother today and go pick up our child? And when you finally pick up, I say, okay, great. Are you going to pick him up? Because I have this plan. George is dead. What now? George is dead. And I need you to forget everything about our child. I need you to forget everything about your life and what you had going on. And I need you to come over here because I made a big oopsie and you're my mopper, quicker, picker, upper. So I need you to come clean this mess for me and completely just alter your life forever. Check, please. And another thing, I never knew about the blue legs. I never knew he described them as blue legs. So this is just such a horrifying picture of she's saying his face is purple. He's saying his legs are blue. Just poor George. Just wow. And even after seeing that, she kept saying it was horrific, and that's absolutely correct. Still couldn't even pretend to force emotion. She tried to. She couldn't do it, though. It's just she couldn't even pretend to cry for him in a genuine way whatsoever because she didn't feel it. She was too busy, worried about herself, and couldn't think outside of herself enough to even feel anything for him. She didn't feel anything for him when he was trapped in the suitcase. She didn't feel anything for him when he was out of the suitcase. She only felt what she felt every time. This is horrific to her. This is for everything you did to me. You are doing all of this to me, which is why I'm going to tell every officer with a heartbeat within 100-mile radius that whatever he did, he's doing stuff to me. This is about me. My life's in danger. Me. Just the amount of details we keep finding out, it just keeps getting worse and worse.
He doesn't set foot into that townhouse. He does wait outside, though, being the good co-parent that he has been. So now, after having first called her ex-husband, after having first waited for Brian Boone to come over, the defendant makes the 911 call.
Not exactly. And I would pull up receipts here. This video is going to have the least amount of receipts I've ever done before because, no, absolutely not. Anyway, she did not call the police after that. First of all, she didn't call Brian. Well, she did. Brian called her a million times. She finally picks up, tells him George is dead. Then he is on his way. Exactly 5 minutes after that phone call, she does call him again. Or not again, but she does call him to talk to him again, asking if he is still coming over. Not the police. Then when he gets there, and we find out from Brian's testimony later on that, a video one day will exist covering that he had to tell her to call the police 3 times before she actually did it. She did not want to do that. And we could all tell by hearing the 911 call. And they're saying, what's your emergency? My boyfriend is dead. And then everyone has that long pause waiting for her to say anything else. And then there's nothing. And so it's like, okay. So, okay, we're sending people out. And then she cries, screams, and makes it all about her, tries to get her narrative out there. And it falls flat and just incriminates her even more.
What you will not hear are tears. You will not hear sorrow. You will hear a certain level of concern. My boyfriend and I were playing last night. Put him in a suitcase, and we were playing hide and seek kind of thing. I fell asleep. Found him dead in the suitcase this morning. I don't know what happened. He had blood coming out of his mouth. Don't know if it was an aneurysm.
She sure did bring up aneurysm a million times. It's like she had nothing else. She was just trying to find a medical issue that she could land on. She had her Jimmy Neutron brain blast, and the only thing that landed on was aneurysm.
Think.
Just a mess.
Pulled him out of the suitcase, tried to give him CPR. He was in the suitcase and I fell asleep. He's not awake, he's purple, he's not breathing. There's some instructions about how to do CPR given to her, asking about whether an AED is available to shock his heart. It's too late. He's cold, he's stiff, he's purple. We were playing hide and seek. This is horrible. This is horrific what happened. Like, what happened? We were playing hide and seek last night and I fell asleep. So she mentions that there was blood coming out of his mouth. And his body, like all bodies in suspicious deaths, was taken to the 9th District Medical Examiner's office and autopsy. What the doctor found was what you would expect after being left in a suitcase, crumpled up in the fetal position. He passed from positional asphyxiation, meaning like you're not going to get full breaths when you're crumpled up like an accordion, and environmental suffocation. You don't have to have a plastic bag over your head, taped shut with a full roll of duct tape to seal it off 100% and be worthy of the vacuum of space to environmentally suffocate. It's close enough if you can't get the oxygen and the CO2 coming in and out of your environment. But she also did notice, yeah, he suffered from blunt force trauma on his torso, in his face, his mouth. She'll use words like contusion, will help her explain contusions and bruises. She'll use words like hematomas, will help her understand for you all that that means bleeding under the skin and blood.
I'm glad he is explaining some of this now. It is funny that he's like, we will help her to explain it to you all because we already know she's going to use every big word imaginable, which always throws me because I'm like, MEs know that they have to testify a million times every time they do these autopsies. So why are they not better at being more accessible with their communication? You know, every jury is a lay audience and has no idea what you're talking about. You need to use words like laceration and then follow up with it's a deep cut or a tear of the skin or whatever you want to use as your definition to make it more understandable to the audience, not the audience, to the jury as a whole. That would be very much appreciated. And then it's just these compounding of injuries that just leads and adds more to the vicious depravity which was this murder. Of it wasn't just enough to leave him zipped in there. It wasn't just enough for him to fall down the flight of stairs. I do believe her when she says her fingers slipped. I think she wanted to take him downstairs, like in this kind of, quote, take out the trash type thing. But her fingers slipped and he goes crashing down the stairs. Which the only thing that has me wondering is that they had something at the bottom of the stairs. Was there stuff all over the floor? Or maybe she took time to pick it up. Who knows? And it wasn't enough to drag him over to the living room. It wasn't enough to film him. You're also beating him with your child's wooden baseball bat. It's just aggravating factor on top of aggravating factor. I cannot believe she did not accept that deal. She deserves a life sentence and she will get a life sentence because once you read out all of these facts, all of the scenario, like looking at the situation as a whole, that there was nothing and no reason for that day for those actions to be taken, pretty much ever, no one deserves to die in that horrific way. So, while justice for her would be a lifetime behind bars, and luckily for everyone, she has done this herself. Since moment one, she has begged them to find her guilty of second-degree murder. She has begged them to listen to her when she said that his family thought that she was going to kill him and that they expressed this thought and concern multiple times. She instructed them to look through her house. She instructed them to look through her phone. She signed a written consent. She took so many statements to try to convince them of her own lie while also literally pointing them in the direction of, I'm the killer and here is where my most damning evidence is. You should look right here. And then you should charge me with the worst crime I can be charged with given the circumstances and the horror that I have committed here. I won't take any responsibility for it, but I am basically going to write out a blueprint for how to find me guilty of second-degree murder, and please put me behind bars for life. For life. I will be utterly shocked if she does not get that. But I'm always okay with being wrong. She will definitely get more than that 22 and a half years. Can guarantee that. But Krennic seems over her 100%. The tone shift from before he saw that interrogation to after should be studied. I might even do a video on that way after this trial is done, just to see the flip of tone, demeanor, and just, oh, okay. So that's how it is.
Expect to improve, that's why they're running through. But he had all this additional trauma, and he had trauma on his fingers as well. So now, the sheriff's office, Orange County Fire Rescue show up, and the defendant interacts with the first patrol officer, you will see and hear that body-worn camera. And it's more of the same of what we heard on the 911 call. It was like hide and seek. It was good. I fell asleep. I don't know what happened. A few hours later, the detectives from the homicide unit of the Orange County Sheriff's Office approach her and are ready to interview her after doing some initial things, which includes grabbing her cell phone off of a counter that was found by a suitcase by Mr. Torres, and giving it to one of their digital forensic examiners, who we'll hear from later in the trial, why. But it's time to give a first interview with the defendant. So they do a first interview with the defendant in one of their unmarked detective patrol cars there on the scene. And the basics of this remain the same, but there's a little more elaboration, as you would expect from trained detectives versus getting the 911 call taken. But the basics of what the defendant tells them is we had wine, we painted, we drew, we did puzzles. The particular wine we had was a Chardonnay from the Woodbridge winery. The bottles, plural, are in the trash. We started about 4 p.m. after Mr. Torres went to the store. Puzzles, art, listening to music, enjoying each other's company. We were literally just enjoying one another's company. The other bottle of wine that was left over from Boer wasn't even half full, so the description she is saying is one bottle of wine and plus a fraction of a bottle of wine left over from the night before. Ladies and gentlemen, not all bottles of wine are made the same. Many of us may envision what you would expect at a restaurant. Those are 750s, 750 milliliters of that. Bottles of wine that were recovered from the defendant's trash can were 1.5 liters, so the equivalent of 2 standard bottles of wine.
Which is still just so wild to me, because she almost pridefully painted that all we had was a bottle of wine, just a bottle of wine. And there was one that was left over from the night before. So we now know there's 3 humongous bottles of wine that were consumed over that night. Because, and I'm not sure if I already brought it up in this video or if I only brought it up in the first time I recorded this, but I'll just make it brief if I had already said this. But yeah, these were equivalent to 2 bottles of wine each. They had 2 of those on this one day at around 12:30 p.m. and around 5 p.m. So they both finished the equivalent of 4 bottles of wine. And they had one of those exact bottles the night before. So within 2 days, there were 6 bottles of wine consumed between the 2. And I can guarantee there was more than just that 1 bottle on Saturday. That's probably just how they ended, was with a little leftover. So I imagine they finished that up when they woke up. Then they had to go get more at 12:30. Then they had to go get more at 5. And all this time, she's going to say, I didn't want to drink. I just did it to placate him. No, that's just not possible. Is he forcing it down your throat? Because you could sit there and nurse on a cup or whatever and say, oh yeah, I'm drinking with you. But if y'all are downing bottle after bottle after bottle, you are definitely participating enthusiastically, intentionally, and voluntarily. Just wow. Just the minimization is so second nature to her. Again, it would have made more sense for her to say, we had 2 large bottles of wine. We were both intoxicated. None of us actually knew what we were doing. This happened. I'm so confused. I don't know what happened. But no, it was this perfect day. I'm this perfect girlfriend. I did all of this stuff for him. We had just a teeny little bit of wine, maybe even half a glass. And then he just dies in a suitcase. Naturally, right? That all just makes sense. Okay, moving on.
A 1.5 liter bottle of wine is 50 ounces. Given that a standard serving of wine is 5 ounces, you can begin to do the math. And there's receipts. The day before, Saturday, February 22nd, 2020, there is a receipt from Publix for a bottle of Woodbridge wine for $9.74. And then Sunday at 12:17 p.m., there is another receipt for $9.74 for a Woodbridge Chardonnay bottle of wine. And then at about 5:30 in the afternoon on February 23rd, again, there is another receipt for the same bottle of wine for the same price. And those two bottles of wine were recovered. They're going to be produced to you in evidence, and you will see that they are in fact Magnum bottles of wine. So that's the context that we're dealing with when we hear things like, we only had one bottle of wine and we finished what was left in the bottle of wine from before. Well, ladies and gentlemen, there's two 1.5 liters that apparently were consumed by a 103-pound man and the defendant, who is in the same weight class.
He said if y'all were wrestling junior varsity, y'all would be in the same weight division. I mean, it's just to emphasize that she is going to portray herself as such a weak and helpless victim against this towering, just hulk of a man. If she was making these claims and accusations against Brian, who is literally over twice the size of George, and that's not an insult to Brian at all. It's just saying George was really, really small. So, this humongous giant abuser she could never get away from, to the point where her psyche was completely thrown off. She could not get away, so she had to kill him intentionally, accidentally, on purpose, without thinking he was going to actually die. And I always love the finger pointing. Point her out. I know that later on, when the witnesses show up, there's this whole issue where they keep forgetting to identify Sarah as the defendant, which, you know, it's important to do so that everyone knows this is who I'm talking about. Obviously, we all know this is who we're talking about, but you need to make sure that every new witness knows who they're talking about, reinforcing this one right here, this one right here. This is the girl you thought she was, and I'm going to tell you why.
Plus, if you believe that the defendant and the decedent would leave leftover wine from any given day, any additional wine that was remaining from the 1.5 liters from Saturday. Ladies and gentlemen, that's a lot of wine.
And that's just another thing, like, a wine drunk is different than other types of drunk. Me, myself, personally, I'm not really a drinker. No judgment to anyone else. That's just not my thing. But I was a bartender for a quick little minute. And wine drunk is definitely different than liquor drunk, definitely different than beer drunk. White wine drunk is even different than red wine drunk. And for me, what I've witnessed is white wine drunk is just the more wilder of them. Red wine drunk, I don't know how to describe it. Red wine drunks are not as aggressively angry and fighting from what I've seen. White wine drunks are ready to brawl and do a lot of high energy things anytime, anywhere, to anyone. Not me projecting.
So in that context, we were just having wine, enjoying each other's company. At one point, we play hide and seek. She says she didn't zip it up all the way. There was enough room, and her words again, there was enough room for his little fingers to get out.
And we talked about that before, just the description as little fingers, little legs. She saw him as little, not this giant, overwhelming, massive, abusive figure in my life. And there's been people who have been abused by people who are smaller and skinnier than they are, but they still wouldn't describe them as this little person, because that presence and fear is massive. So you're not going to sit here and say, well, these little fingers were here, these little legs were there. And it's not saying you would describe them as any other way. You would just say fingers and legs. It's just, the little is just another little demeaning kind of thing. And I know it's very small and probably reading way too much into it, but for me, it shows her mindset and her mental state is not that she is in fear of him. I think she's afraid of him when she's provoked him and he has retaliated, or if he's started it and like is just lunging at her. But most of the time, it does not seem like she's afraid of him at all. She would not be able to do the things that she does or say the things that she does if she was in constant fear of him or felt threatened by him. And even whenever the police showed up, she would amplify everything that happened to her and then at the last second be like, oh no, there's no weapons in there. You don't have to worry. He's the worst human alive. He did all this to me, but don't worry. He's not really a threat. Go get him and then take him away because he's so mean to me, but he won't harm you. It's this just duality because she sees him in this way. She wants other people to adopt that duality too. He is both a weak and passive monster and aggressor. And these details really matter when it comes to justifying her vitriolic comments. You know, there's some people who believe once you've been under that sustained abuse, you're always in fear, this and that. You finally get your revenge. You're taunting them because you're finally free in your mind, this, that, however you want to justify it. She is showing us that she was not in that state, in my mind, with these little slips of this isn't just a one-time victory. She wanted complete control over him, and she made sure she got it in every way possible. But this wasn't all of this built up, and that's why I uncharacteristically filmed him and said all of these horrible things. No, it sounded like any other abusive night. He crossed the line that you set, and you had to punish him to put him back in line.
We were still having a good time and whatever. And basically, Mr. Torres is stressing out about jobs, his ex-wife, about money, and so they're just doing puzzles and doing things to keep his mind off of it.
Again, painting him as the reason all of this is happening because he can't contain his stress because he is failing in life and all of these things he's dealing with. We always have to try to do things to get his mind off of it because that's my main concern because I'm such a good person. Then when it flips, it's I have everything going on in my life and now I have to deal with this, referring to the laptop in the interrogation containing the video of her mocking him as he dies. It's all about me, but then when she has to tell it back, it's all about him. We did all of these things for him. It does not sound like you did puzzles for him. I'm just going to go out on a limb, and I'm going to say he's not really a puzzle guy. I didn't get that vibe. He was an artist. His neighbor said he was an artist and showed him his artwork. I still have my own personal belief, my little conspiracy theory hat, because she kept saying we were trying to make new artwork. We were trying to replace the artwork on the wall. I think it was his artwork on the wall that she wanted to replace with our artwork. We should make things together because I should be in every single aspect of your life, even if this is one of your few passions that you can have that are not attributed to me. I want to be involved in that. And if that means I have to get rid of any little semblance of you as an individual, I need to replace it with us. But it's my phone. And I only say my phone because it's her forward, but it's us. That's how she wants it ideally. Okay, sorry.
Sometimes I'll start a sentence, and I don't even know where it's going. I just hope I find it along the way.
Moving on.
Doing art, playing with the dogs, dancing with the dogs, playing hide and seek. We were always trying to outdo each other where we could find each other the best. When they started playing hide and seek, she went up to the shower and then got tired of hanging out in the shower and came down, and that's when she found him playing around in the suitcase. We both thought it was funny. I'm going to zip you up. Two little fingers could stick out. And she went upstairs thinking, he'll get out, we're going to have sex and go to sleep and call it a day. It was a good day.
She sure did say that, which is absolutely out of this world. Saying, oh, I thought he was going to get out and then come up and have sexual relations like we always do. Because we always zip each other up in a suitcase and laugh and beg for each other and then get out on our own and we decide to go have sex with each other. But also, we decide to go have sex with each other, fast forward 4.5 years later, and if he got out, if I die, I die. It's obvious that she's lying and we all know that, but I have to keep reiterating it and rethreading it with every inconsistent story because it's like, this is outrageous. This is the narrative you're going with, and you turn down that 15-year plea and to do this? You enjoy life. You enjoy it.
She insists that they had wine, but we're not drunk. You will be able to assess that for yourselves when you hear the recording she made. No ill will between us last night. Last argument, maybe last week. Don't really argue. We came home, drink, smoke, did art, listen to music, play with the dogs. We drink what we can afford. We used to be able to afford liquor, but now we can only afford wine. And that's how that day ends with the police. She goes and sleeps and stays at her ex-husband's house the night of February 24th and 25th. What they are doing, and by they I mean the Orange County Sheriff's Office in part, is going through her phone. That's when they discovered the 2 videos that I just described for you. And there's other things in the phone, which I will discuss with you in a little bit. But she's summoned in for another interview, and she sits down and gives another interview on February 25th, now Tuesday. She does describe past instances of violence. You're going to hear about that. She's going to say, Mr. Torres had hit her with a curtain rod about a month ago. Since then, though, like, we've been good. I've been good.
I'm sorry, I need to cut in here because you are not doing the tone justice. She didn't just say, he hit me with a curtain rod. She said, he hit me with a curtain rod, and I can't believe you didn't take that either. Meaning, I can't believe you didn't arrest him. And then it wasn't just, I've been good. It was, I've been good. Because Scott was like, because she said, it's been good. Scott said, what's your definition of good? Referring to the relationship. She interpreted that as a personal attack and said, I've been good. And then immediately followed with, I don't think you understand. He comes after me. He comes after me. So I flee or go upstairs and go to sleep. So completely departing from we've been good. And this is what she does. Anytime the finger gets pointed towards her or she even thinks about that, she has to drop something about him to make him look worse.
Yeah, you said a month ago he hit you with a curtain rod.
Yeah, with a curtain rod. That's why I can't believe you guys didn't take that either.
Wow.
Like, we've been good. I don't know if, like, it's since the last time he got out of jail. Like, we've been good, and he's been having his classes and seeing his probation officer, who's amazing. So...
What do you mean by good? What's your definition of good?
The probation officer?
No, you said you guys have been good. What's your definition?
I've been good. I don't think you all understand. He comes at me all the time. He comes at me. So it's either I flee or try to go upstairs and go to sleep.
And it's such an automatic defense mechanism that she doesn't even realize she contradicts her story from 5 seconds prior.
She describes that he comes at her all the time. He comes at me. So it's either I flee or I try to go upstairs and go to sleep. That's usually what it is. I don't know if you talk to Brian, her husband, about any of that, but most of the time I flee and I go over there.
Which she thinks looks good for her and makes her look better because she tries to leave the situation. It makes her look like a worse, more unhinged person. You're running to your ex's house where your son is, meaning on a dime, whenever you feel like it, whenever y'all get in an altercation, you disrupt their lives. You center yourself and you run over there, and I'm sure you beg and plead and you put on the biggest thing of, my life's in danger, I never knew this, and then I get inside the house, oh, let me finally play with my son. And then, oh, can I spend the night? Okay. Y'all are divorced for a reason. I feel so bad for that child. It's impossible for him to have any sort of routine. Whether kids want to admit it or not, they crave structure, they crave predictability, safety, and understanding. That child has none of that. I'm sure Brian is offering and providing as much as he can, but because of his mother, he is constantly being disrupted. And also that, like, backing up to the custody situation, I think that is just a terrible custody agreement of every other day. He is switching parents, and then every other weekend as well. There's just so much inconsistency, especially when one parent isn't doing it regularly. So it's sometimes you go over there, sometimes not. even though mentally you know you are supposed to switch parents every single day. What is that subliminal message? Oh, my parent doesn't want me today. They might want me another day. But because this is set up the way it is, I don't know. I feel like it should be a block of time and a block of time, not separated day by day by day, weekend, weekend. And it's always funny to me to just think about what she thought Brian was going to tell the police, that Brian was just going to protect her and say all of these negative things about him and to say, oh, she's gotten all of these injuries. She comes over here all the time. This guy was so bad, this and that. It's like, no, you did this. He had to order you to call the police 3 times after you realized, begged and pleaded that he was not going to help you. And then you just thought that when the police got there, he was going to just start protecting you with all of this and all of that. He made every smart decision that day. Well, probably should not have gone over there anyway. But however, he's the one who did call, find out, then went over, said, I'm not involved with this. You call the police. And again, I can't remember which points I've made in this video already and the ones that I did in the other one. So if it's repeated, then it's repeated. But I know the defense is going to try to grill him on that when they bring him up in their case and say, why didn't you call the police? And then they're definitely going to use that deleted phone call, because they should, of she called you at 11:46. Didn't she call you for help? Didn't she think that you were going to come over and that she just passed out because she was waiting for her knight in shining armor to come get her? And trying to put all of that responsibility on him. Obviously, that's not going to work, but they have to do anything they can to point the finger in a different direction and somehow try to make it his fault. And if he did actually help her, she absolutely would have put him over the coals before herself. In an instant. And like, I keep trying to imagine that morning, because we know she was up, right? It's impossible. She has dogs who need to go outside. She has a nicotine addiction that needs to be fed every morning right when you get up. So there's no way she didn't notice he wasn't there. She didn't go out to the patio and didn't walk by the suitcase. I believe that it wasn't until the morning when she did get him out of the suitcase, but I believe it was early in the morning. Like when she first woke up, she goes downstairs. Oh my gosh, I remember I didn't let him out. I'm opening it and he's not alive. I'm freaking out. Although I do believe that she knew he wasn't alive before she went to sleep, I think she just wore herself out trying to figure out how she was going to explain this away and accidentally passed out and then wakes up and realizes, oh, he is still actually dead and I have not taken him out of this suitcase. And then every time she gets one of Brian's phone calls, she has to actively ignore it. I do not believe for a second that phone was not glued to her hand once she realized that he was dead. Because I know she was Google searching all this stuff. How do I get away with murder? Viola Davis did not give her the answers and she was freaking out. And I love that Brian stood his ground and did not try to help her this time.
There's a discussion about why she stays with him, and you'll hear that for yourself. She will say that she doesn't really want to drink. She just takes an occasional drink. She drinks to placate him, Mr. Torres.
I still can't believe she said that, seemingly with a straight face, like, is going to get on that stand and say, I do not drink, he makes me drink. Or I only drink so that he doesn't feel bad. That is just more and more responsibility pushing on someone. You can't even take a modicum of responsibility of saying, yes, I enjoy drinking. We have an issue. It was exacerbated by his abuse. I felt like I needed to be drunk all the time just to make it through. He was drunk all the time. I thought that when I was drinking as well, that's when he was happiest and when he was calmest. So we drank together regularly. No, it's I don't want to drink. I would never drink unless he forced me to. When you were literally called Drunky the Bear. A mess. You were like this when you were with Brian. So did George go back in time and force you to drink all those years that you were with Brian? Oh, okay.
She says that you're going to see phone videos of Mr. Torres smashing her TV in the past, like a month earlier. You may see that too.
He's getting ahead of the bad facts, he's accepting it, and he's downplaying it with the delivery, which you kind of have to do in this case so you understand that Just because he did that, just because there was abuse, just because he hit her even a month prior, does not mean she's justified in killing him. Does not mean killing him in such a cruel and horrific manner is self-defense. This is revenge. Everything that she is planting these seeds of are reasons why she would want to commit this and why it was an intentional act of revenge that she now has to stretch to be some kind of self-defensive measure.
But she doesn't get drunk. When she drinks, she likes being non-compos mentis, her words, not mine, having her wits about herself.
She is so proud of that vocabulary and her understanding of the English language. I mean, she still uses it very incorrectly most of the time, but she didn't use it incorrectly in this instance. And it just is going to bite her in the ass again because it's like, oh, you're using this type of language. Obviously, you're not drunk before us right now. Although she's one of those people who probably thinks they're completely functioning when they're drunk. Meanwhile, we see her just losing her mind on all of these body cam footages. And that defensive minimization tactics that she's done so many times in her life all kicked in as just a survival method, startle response when she was talking to the police. And so it was just her instinct to keep saying, no, I'm not drunk. I'm okay. He's the monster. That's why I accidentally forgot to let him out, because it's his fault. I don't have an issue. And now it's all compounding and coming back on her of saying, you have told everyone imaginable that you knew what you were doing, that you didn't want him to die, and that he did not harm you that night, evidenced by no injuries on you. The injuries on him are horrific. So the contrast is not even comparable to where you needed to exert that kind of cruelty and violence towards someone who didn't leave a mark on you. And that is important because it was such a violent death. Because she believes if I did not kill him with my hands in that moment in time, then I didn't do it. The suitcase did it. Me hitting him with the bat over and over and over again, I didn't kill him there. He was still begging my name, so I knew he was alive. He was alive when I went upstairs. Why? Because he was still begging and calling my name. I didn't do this. So she doesn't think she was violent at all, in contrast. And the fact that she could say that with such a straight face, knowing how many times she beat him with that baseball bat. And I brought this up, actually I brought this up in the interrogation video that's not out yet, but I brought this up in there about how she strategically uses the word, I did not lay a hand on him. I did not touch him. I didn't lay a hand on him, again and again and again, in order to mask the actual act, which was hitting him with the baseball bat again and again. So she's still telling the truth of, I didn't lay a hand on him. Well, actually, I still think that was a lie. But in her mind, she is telling the truth. I did not hit him with my hands, meaning I did not lay a hand on him. How I got him in the suitcase, how I zipped it up, how I hit him with the baseball bat, that's not me touching him. That's not me putting my hands on him. It just kind of happened. It was wild to me.
Then she gets to the hide and seek again and describes that they've played it 3 times before, but had never zipped one another shut in it before. And they were really just running out of places to hide because it's just a townhome. She does not remember, according to her, she does not remember taking any photos or videos of the night's events. At this point, they ask her, well, would you like to see it? And she says, I can't watch this.
Close, but that's not exactly what she said. She did say originally she does want to watch it. When they first played it for her, she immediately says, no, I don't remember that. And I think that memory is crashing back into her head at that moment. Then they have to go get the battery, the charger, and she's freaking out, being like, you don't know who I am. And then when they come back, she's like, do I have to watch this? I don't know how much I can take. I don't know how much I can take, even though she thought she knew how much George could take. She didn't care how much George could take when he is pleading, And now you're pleading to the officers to not show you a video you took on your phone that you told them to look through to find videos that you took of George, but only the ones where he was doing something bad to you. Okay. And then Chelsea goes, well, we just want to show you because it's on your phone. Don't you want to see? And she goes, yes, please. And then she says she doesn't want to watch it. It's like she contradicts herself like almost automatically, and then has the nerve to say, you guys are killing me right now. I just know the air disappeared from that room when she said that. You really just had the nerve to say, them trying to show you a video on your phone you took is them killing you. When you killed him the day before, there's no empathy there. None. It is only concern for herself and only thinking about herself, which is why I do not feel bad whatsoever for what she has coming to her, because she built her prison cell brick by brick.
No, it's just the way you said it.
You guys are scaring me.
Why?
Well, we just want you to watch this. This came from your phone. Don't you want to know what's on it?
Yes, please. Yes, please. Is it long? Because I don't know how much I can take.
No.
I don't know how much I can take. Do I have to watch this? I continuously throw up. I don't sleep. I don't want to see it, if that's okay. I don't want to watch it, please.
So this is upside down.
Guys, this is killing me right now.
So this image is upside down.
And again, at no point were there any emotions for him. The only emotions she had were for how they were seeing her. She was so offended and hurt and in disbelief, not that he was dead, but that they could possibly think that she could do something like this. She could do something so horrific and unconscionable, completely glossing over the unconscionable deed that is right before her. No remorse. Any human who truly did not think or did not remember they did that and actually genuinely loved the person like they said they did would be horrified, mortified that they could possibly do something like that, and would be broken down or broken up in some kind of way. Not her, though. Not her.
I flipped him over. I flipped him over, and that's where it was. Guys, this is killing me right now. That's why I flipped it over between the two videos. I didn't do anything intentional. Discussion over whether he had enough room to get any of his fingers out from the zipper. My intention was not to leave him there. We both got in there. Both of us were in there.
I'm sorry, what? Both of you were in the suitcase? So now the story has evolved into, we both got in the suitcase that night. Is that what she's going to say when she said, I unzipped it with one finger? And the detectives were like, from the outside, because that's how it is designed. And she was like, well, you could from the inside too. Is she now going to say that she, with her claustrophobic ass, got inside the suitcase and casually let herself out? And if that happened, would she not have been in a tirade that he put her in the suitcase and did not let her out? You honestly believe that Sarah, 911 operator Paulsen, would not have called the police if he put her in a suitcase and she got out on her own? Absolutely not. In no world does that make sense. But she needs to say, I was in there too, so it was easy to get out, which is also easy to disprove. Was her DNA in the suitcase with him? Were her skin cells in there as well? Were there any indications that shows hair, anything, that she got in there? I mean, the hair is brittle and broken. I would imagine some would be left over if you were climbing in a suitcase. And that's why I love it when at the end of her interrogation, she asks, can I have a spacious cell? I just don't put me in that whatever individual cell because I'll have a panic attack this, I'll have a panic attack that. Seconds after having a 2-hour-long conversation about a man dying in a suitcase, confined, unable to get out. But you can only think about you. And I'm glad that we learned in another hearing that that's what they actually did. That she was put in a cell, because when Captain DeGiovanni offered her that cell in the old Max dorm so that she could have all the time she wanted to view her case material, and she rejected it because she was like, if that's anything like what I faced in the Orange County Corrections, whatever, then I never want to experience that again.
So can I ask you, or whoever it is, those holding cells, the holding cells, am I going to be put in one of those?
I don't know.
Last time I had a panic attack.
Let them know that.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, you're familiar with the big bay. As long as you go in and you act civil to them, they'll set you in the big bay. And you'll be left there for
Can
a
you
while.
request that while I'm there?
No, that's not up to us. We don't work at the jail.
As long as like he's saying, is if you don't
If you
act
go
up,
in and act like this, you'll go in and they'll put you in the big bay. If you go in there screaming and kicking and yelling and
Why would
cursing
I
at
do
people,
that?
I don't know. I'm just letting you know that's what happens. That's how they weed people out. If you go in acting like this,
So I asked for the big bay?
they'll put you there as long as you're acting like this.
Yeah, because the last time I had a major panic attack on the little things.
I can make the accommodation where I could put you in a single-person cell where you would have unfettered access, uninterrupted access to your case material.
I've been in a situation where I have been behind the closed doors also when I was made PC when I first got to Orange County Corrections Department, and if it's anything like that, I do not ever want to have that experience again. And to be honest with you, forgive me, Captain, but I do not believe that it would be this simplified, and nonetheless, I'm behind a closed door for 24 hours.
So it looks like our wish came true, and she was put behind a holding cell when they took her out of that interrogation video, which, I mean, makes sense. You were being charged with second-degree murder. For a violent death, I don't think they would just casually put you in the open bay as though this were just a misdemeanor or a minor felony. But she probably was combative too and asked for a million things, and they say, you know what, we're tired of this, go into this little cell. And I hope she doesn't enjoy it when she has her whole life sentence going through it again. It always blows my mind when people who do horrific things and horrific things are done back to them are shocked. I mean, we all in our lives have seen karma play out. What goes around comes around. Whether you believe in anything or you don't, we all have had an experience where we have witnessed or been a part of where something has happened. Either we have done something or someone else has done something, and we have seen that same thing come back around and happen to them. That oddly specific thing. Because that's the only way you learn the lesson, is when you go through exactly what you put someone else through. And obviously you can't do that, and nor should you, because no one should die in that way. However, you being claustrophobic and feeling like you're locked in a cage for the rest of your life is comparable to him being locked in a suitcase for the rest of his life. Luckily for him, his pain is over, and his struggle is now in the past. Yours can continue on as long as you are able to take breaths he couldn't. So don't give me any of this, I'm going to be mad later down the line when I'm in this cell and I'm claustrophobic and I'm having panic attacks. So is he. You didn't give a damn. I don't give a damn about this either. It reminds me of the Shonda Vander Ark case where both of them really, after Paul Ferguson was interrogated, which just so you know, I will be getting to that interrogation eventually. I don't know when, but Paul Ferguson's interrogation is on my list because I have thoughts, opinions, and words for Mr. Paul Ferguson. But I will save those for when his time is up. But after his mess of an interrogation, he asks for a snack. After they talked about for almost 2 hours, or over an hour at least, about him starving and torturing his little brother. But can I have a snack? And Shonda, who is the mother who instructed this to happen and was the mastermind behind all of this, again complained and was actually on the stand saying, I was so distraught and I was in so much shock at what happened that I didn't eat for a whole month in jail. As though we are supposed to feel bad about you not eating when you starved this boy to death, on top of the physical torments that you also put him through that I'm not going to detail. But yeah, I'm glad. I hope you don't have a good meal for the rest of your life. I hope it all tastes a little bad, a little unseasoned, a little overcooked, a little mushy, a little just bad in general, that it hurts your stomach just a little bit for the rest of your life. Why? And I know that sounds like a lot. Like, why do you want that for someone's whole entire life? Because that's what they did to their victims. That child's whole entire life became hell under those two. And now they want to complain because they're not comfortable in jail and that they will spend the rest of their lives there, as they should. So just know, people, it's real when how you treat people will affect your future life, whether you think it is now or whether you are shocked about it later. It all goes around, it all comes around, whether you see it personally or not. So treat people kindly, and kind things will return to you eventually. Odds are. But when you treat people like this, you can't be shocked when the same treatment comes back to you.
When she went upstairs, my plan was not to, quote, he'll be up here any minute. My plan wasn't to leave him in the suitcase. Why is all this going on? It's the drinking. That's what it is. It's the drinking. I thought he was okay. Guys, that's how we were with each other. Nobody understands our relationship. This whole suitcase thing never happened before, though she described it happening before. I'll never drink alcohol again. She insists that she has no injuries on her, and you don't have to take her word for it because they took photographs of her and there were no injuries on her. She insists over and over that there was no violence that day. It's like, okay, we're in a good place right now. Ask her about saying fuck you to Mr. Torres. Well, that's just being playful and having a good day. Everybody's having a good day.
Again, close, but I'm not going to pull the receipts on this because who has time for all that? But she did say everything was a good day. We were having a good day. Oh, wait, no, I can pull it up. I clipped this out before.
Everything was fine and dandy. Everything
fine and dandy.
was fine and dandy. We had a good day. It was a good day. We've had good days lately. It's been good. Like, I don't even know where this is coming from. So happy. Like, it was such a good day. I kid you not. He and I having a great day, fooling around and being stupid, but I would never do that.
But it happened, and you did.
But that's after being playful
But no one's
and
laughing.
having a good day.
No one's laughing except you.
Everybody's having a good day. Oh, I'm sorry?
I would hate to see a bad day. The laughing
It
matter.
was fun.
Not by that
All
video.
day, all
By
day.
that video, that
All
part
day.
wasn't.
It was a great day.
Okay.
It didn't end well.
And I would play this on repeat when she gets up there and says, I was afraid for my life. Every single moment of my life, I had to do this. I know right now she is sitting there after having to see everything. And I know she's looking at the jury. You shouldn't, you don't want them to catch you looking at them. That's a little weird, especially like at least before you testify. But I know she's looking over there when they are seeing the worst of this and is thinking, oh shit, I should have probably taken that deal. Yes, you should have. You really should have, because you buried yourself within the first 48 hours of reporting this. You buried yourself to the point of no return. The fact that they offered you a second chance at life that you didn't offer, George. Plain is also shocked at how someone could behave in this manner, and then is given a golden Willy Wonka ticket to get out of jail in less than 10 years. You would have been in your mid to late 50s and could have had all of this time, the rest of your life pretty much, to be with your son if he ever wanted to talk to you again, but you would at least have that potential. Now, you're going to sit on here and he's going to watch you. If he does still love you, he does, I'm sure he does. But if he does still enthusiastically care about you to this day in this moment, I know that was a slap in the face to him, saying, oh, she wants to get out right now, even though the evidence is stacked against, in that boy's 13-year-old mind, even he can conceptualize the fact that mom could have come home and she chose not to because she chose herself. Again, she chose her own self-comfort instead of taking any responsibility that could have actually, it wouldn't be true accountability, but it would be, hi, I accept that I'm a crazy murderer. Please forgive me. And then you do your time and you get out. But because of your narcissistic traits and tendencies, you can't allow that self-image to be tarnished. You have to martyr yourself until the very end. And that's exactly what you're going to do. You're just going to victimize yourself as you survived, you persevered, you survived, you're being victimized again. You all don't understand. It's just again. You're doing this to me. You're doing this to me. At no point will she say, I messed up. I regret what I did. I'm sorry he's dead.
I didn't touch him, nor did he touch me. Her words. What else is found on her phone? There's a conversation between Mr. Torres's brother, and again, nobody knows who's using these phones at the time text messages are sent in these records that you're going to see. But it's indicated that there's a communication between one of the decedent's brothers and the owner of the phone that was taken that belongs to Ms. Boone. The text from the brother is, yo, my daughter told me what you did, Sarah. I don't want you around any of my daughters or nieces and nephews. And that's Christmas 2019, just under 2 months before this event. She replies, or the person using her device at this time, ugh, your quote-unquote dad hit me in the face.
And see, we didn't hear any of this before, like this message from the brother who said, I heard what you did, Sarah. I know you said we don't know who's saying, responding here. However, if George was the one on the phone and the brother addressed Sarah, something tells me George, the brother, would not respond, your quote-unquote dad hit me. That makes no sense. In no world would he reference his own father in that manner if that was him actually responding. We know this, right? So it is Sarah who is responding. And this is after she pushed his father to the ground, because the story goes, actually, you know what? I'll let the brother tell it.
I know one day she came, it's been maybe 2 months. My dad, because she always tried to hug everybody, and everybody didn't want to be hugging like that. And she pushed my dad, and my dad fell.
And now her excuse is, he hit me, and now I had to respond. Sir, the garage can top had some words to add to that. But yeah, she's saying he hit me, and that's why I had to push this old man to the ground. And does that make more sense, or does it make more sense that this woman who likes to touch up on everyone, especially cops, who have to tell her multiple times, no hugs today, stop scraping my arm, and then give a fist bump of just, don't touch me. And she does it anyway. And Melissa even had to say, she kept grabbing my arm, she kept touching me. I told her that she needs to stop or else we are going to have to call the police.
She kept grabbing me by the arms to the point that I told her, I said, you touch me one more time, we're going to have a problem. I'm either going to contact the police or whatever we need to do, but you can't keep grabbing on me. I had asked her several times to quit touching me. And because of that, she would do the same thing to Jean, and Jean didn't like it.
I see it at birth.
10-10-7-7.
I get it. Make sure not to squeeze my arm anymore.
I may or may not find those receipts, but they're out there. Just trust me. She touches people without their consent all the time. So it would not shock me if he put his hand out while she is coming towards him, and her body runs into his hand because she is still trying to brace for impact, ignoring his boundaries of stay away, and then takes that as a hit and then pushes him back 10 times harder than that. And it was the day before Christmas? And that's how she behaves? She gets rejected by a hug and has to be violent in return. This also just shows what kind of character she is. If there is a slight perceived, like an old man not wanting to hug her, she takes that as a hit and has to respond with a hit. What do you think happens when she perceives George is hitting her? You think she just sits there and does nothing? I found the perfect meme that I thought really encapsulated how she is as a person when she is antagonistic. She will go after someone, attack them, and as soon as they rev up to start responding, now she's the victim. She has to run away. And she lies just so effortlessly. She did the same thing when she accused one of George's friends of assaulting her because they all lived in the same neighborhood, and it was out of nowhere. And said it in front of this other guy's girlfriend because, I don't know. Basically, whatever happened by the end of this blow up and by the end of this lie, I think it's a lie, I do, based off of what was told and what happened. Now George and his friend don't talk anymore. Meaning, who does he talk to more? Sarah. Who can he depend on more? Sarah. If he tried to go over to that friend's place, do whatever, find some kind of release, find some kind of safety in some other friendship, it's gone. She accused him of assault, and there's no going back. Ruin the tension. And a whole family was attached to this. She picked a fight with this whole other family. She loves picking fights with whole ass families and then blaming it on them. So it's his fault that she pushed him down. Just like it's George's fault that she zipped him up.
The next text is, hide and seek I shall.
I know that looked like he was pausing for dramatic effect, but then I saw him like scrolling and I think he just lost his place. But it is still important because what? How did you get that from that? He said, I heard what you did. I don't want you around my daughters ever again. And she says he did it like your quote unquote dad, as in she loves to just put quotes around anything when she wants it to be condescending. Like she put quote unquote husband in quotes so many times in her divorce court letter in an attempts to devalue whatever title that they had. Former husband, your so-called dad hit me and did this to me, so it's okay with that. Hide and seek I shall. We understand it's because she's drunk that none of this makes coherent or linear sense. However, where are you pulling that from? Were you just playing hide and seek with George? Were you playing hide and seek with his daughters at one point? Or like the brother's daughters at one point? Or hide and seek I shall? What does that mean? In this context, I have no idea.
January 13th, there's another heated discussion. She describes it on January 13th in a text to Mo, the brother again. It's a Torres thing. Boo. Sends a picture. Keep the fugly creep out too. It's still fugly. Lose. The brother responds, please do something with yourself, Sarah. God bless you. The defendant's response, and bless you and all of you too. I'll get, in all capitals, rid of him. Then it'll be, in all capitals, better. Ugh, Torres. Referring to Mr. Torres.
And that message was sent 1 month and 10 days before she killed him. I'll get rid of him. And 1 month and 10 days later, she did. And she's saying Torres to the brother as though he's not also a Torres. I guess I'm not 100% sure on that, but odds are he is. And so it sounds like when she's saying it's a Torres thing, she's insulting him too, being like, all of you. This is all of you. You all behave like this. This is your fault. And so he says, God bless you, do something with yourself, or do something with yourself, God bless you. Does that sound like the family that's trying to kill her? That wants her dead at any moment? It sounds like a family who wants you out of their lives forever. I can guarantee if Sarah had disappeared one day, not killed or anything, but had just left and gone away, they would not have searched for her at all. They would not have missed her. They would not have done anything to her. They would not have gone after her. She would have finally left them alone like they have always wanted. And then she's going to be condescending. Bless you too. And then she wonders why they don't like her. They haven't been forgiving of me. They call me White Dragon. They call me the Blue Eyes White Dragon, which now I have to put this effect after it.
They're going to think I killed him.
Why would they think that?
They always have said that. They've always have said that.
What have they
I told you it's because I'm the blue-eyed white dragon. That's what they call me. Because they don't want him with me. So he's basically just not really been around his family because he chooses me over them. Even after I have encouraged him numerous times to go over there and see his family.
My blue eyes white dragon!
And that's how they see her, as this malicious, mythic white beast that is there to terrorize their family. And they were right. They were absolutely right. And you called him like a fugly person. You called him a fugly person. And then decided to say, ugh, as though, and it's just ironic or wild because her shirt that she was wearing in that body cam footage had the words, is ugh an emotion? Plain is shocked too that you have no self-awareness, so you're talking about other people's appearances. And this is just another thing. A month and 10 days before you murdered him, you're calling him this fugly thing that you need to get rid of and things will be better. Are things better?
Getting rid of. And that's the case. That's what the evidence is going to show. But we, the state of Florida, and the members of the jury in our journey through this case, we're all going to come up to a door that says, danger, keep out, stay away, by court order.
All right, now he just finished the opening, basically. That was a good opening. Should have stopped right there. Should have stopped right there. Now we are going up to, he's going to describe this mythic door, and it's going to be talking about the battered spouse. I do not think he needed to get into this yet. I get it. He's trying to get in front of the defense because he doesn't know how much the defense is going to rely on that. So he wants to just pop that balloon right then and there. But bringing it up too prematurely tells the jury that that is too important to you. You kind of want to downplay it, let them come out with it, and then just demolish it for X, Y, and Z reasons. You can get into it a little bit of just like, they're going to claim that he was abusive. We're going to show you that the evidence proves that abuse does not justify the actions she took, and this was not defense. Regardless of what they say, the evidence will prove that this was not self-defense. But now he's going to dig into battered spouse syndrome, and I don't think he needs to.
And that door says the defendant's history with the victim. It is a door we shall not enter without permission and invitation. Halloween in like 13 days. Part of the vampire lore is vampires can't come get you in your own house.
Child, what? Halloween is in 13 days, so let's talk about vampires and how vampires can't enter without permission. That's a choice. That's a choice. That's a weird choice, but it's a choice to try to paint the picture of they cannot talk about his past, they can't talk about this history of violence unless something happens and unless they're invited in by meeting these certain criteria. Part of me also thought that it's like, is he talking about their relationship in general, about how she continuously let him back in and brought him back into her home, and bringing the vampire into her home? Is that da 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 da? But then I don't like that characterization of him as a vampire. So I don't think it's that. I do think it's just, you can't get into this without doing that. The jury does not need to know this right now. They don't need to know that at all. I would spend maybe 30 seconds to a minute, maybe 2 minutes on this, and then get out of there. Because there's nothing that is going to be gained by going down this avenue so early. You're actually going to detract from every good thing that you set up. By the end of that opening, you have set her up as this malicious monster to not only him, but to his family and to people in general. Now you're prepping them to say, well, the defense is going to say that he is a horrible person. Every defense is going to say that, more or less. If they're taking this self-defense measure, they're going to paint the victim horribly. You don't really need to tell them in depth why they can't talk about it, because that's not speaking to the validity of it. You are saying they're going to get into topics that the court is going to tell you they can't get into. Not that they're going to get into topics that are lies, that are deceitful, that are going to contradict her story later on. So when you frame it this way, it almost acts like you're saying it's the truth. They're going to say that she's a battered spouse, and she is. But they're not allowed to get into that unless they do boom, boom, boom. And I don't believe that, right? They don't believe that either. But when you express it in this way, that can be an inference, especially to the one jury member who's skeptical, that one jury member. And I don't think we've talked about it here yet, but unlike other trials where there in other states where there are like 12 jurors, traditionally, that's what we see on TV, and that's how it's represented. You have 12 jurors. In Florida, and for this case, there are 6. There's a panel of 6. They do have a bunch of alternates in case stuff happens. So there are at least 10 or more people who are in that jury box watching the whole trial, but only 6 of them will actually go back and deliberate. Which for this trial, because it is zooming so fast, that's not too bad. The Karen Reed trial went on for 10 weeks. I would have been heated if I'd sat through 10 weeks of that and then I was an alternate and not even called to deliberate. I'd be spilling all the tea when I get out of there. I said, who wants to sign a book deal? I wasn't a juror, but I was almost one. I'll tell you everything I saw, everything I thought. Because I would be that petty. Absolutely. You're not going to choose me by random. But no, I don't think 6 individuals will be that conflicted on this, especially just rereading the evidence when they're in that deliberation room alone. So I wouldn't harp on this because I don't think it's that big a deal.
Well, I anticipate during this trial, we're going to be invited in to the defendant's past relationship for the previous couple of years with Mr. Torres.
I always got to call it out every time I see it. Thank you for pointing out the defendant. Maybe that is why Mr. Cacciatore did not have all these witnesses identify the defendant, because Mr. J pointed her out so many times. You know who I'm talking about. This one right. Train will call her out too. Now everyone knows who we're talking about.
And as we come inside this room, at her beckoning, we are going to have things pointed out that she would like us to focus on. And you're going to hear the first night the defendant met the decedent, Mr. Torres, he smashes her phone, punches her. It's the first time in her life she'd ever been punched, I expect the testimony would be. And he made her curl up in a fetal position on her own porch for 4 hours, and she was only able to escape this situation when he fell asleep.
Wait, come again? Did I miss this before? So you're saying the first time you ever met George, on your first quote-unquote date, so I guess the first time you met him was also a date. Did y'all meet on like christianmingle.com or something? Or did y'all meet at a bar? Okay, so what, did y'all go on a date the first time? Whatever. The first date you had, George allegedly smashes your phone, and then I guess hits you enough that you are in the fetal position for 4 hours. So are you saying that you are getting beat in the fetal position on the first date for 4 hours, and you only escape when he falls asleep? Where are y'all? Are y'all back at your place? You took him home on the first date and let this man come to your home and hit you and not call the police? None of that makes sense. None of her lies make sense, but it always has to paint her better, paint him as a monster, and paint herself as the victim. Wow, that is mind-blowing. Smashes your phone, beats you for 4 hours on the first date. Oh, is the smashed phone supposed to explain why you didn't call the police? Nah. Don't buy that for a second. Because then how did you escape? When he fell asleep, where'd you go? Whose house are we in? Is he in your house going to sleep on the very first date? Where? And then you call no police in the morning? None of this makes sense at all. On the first date. And yet you go back? And yeah, normally you don't want to say all that, but there is no, absolutely not. No, that is 100% your responsibility at that point. Let it be known. If you go on the first date with someone and you have no connections towards them, no financial ties, no emotional connections, you literally just met this stranger and they beat you for 4 hours, and you choose to go on another date with them, that's on you. Unless they threaten you, and then you need to call the cops, which in this case, we know you had no issue doing. So I'm going to call a smooth BS on this. That makes no sense whatsoever. You fell in love with him so deeply on the first date, I'm guessing within a few hours, that you allowed him to just attack you, and that you did nothing, and that you're in the fetal position. She does this. None of her stories ever takes time into account in a believable sense. So like in her time frame originally, when she was discussing how the night went, she said they started playing games around 8, and then at 11:12 is when he's in the suitcase. So she wanted the police to believe that they were playing hide and seek from 8 to 11. Yet it only, by the story, it only seemed like they played one round, one confused round where they both were hiding and expecting the other to seek. Again, it's a lie. That doesn't make sense. But what is this? The first date? No, this is wild. Oh, that's crazy to me. That's absolutely absurd to me. Oh, and it's the first time you ever got punched? Yeah, well, it's not the first time you ever punched. We know that for a fact from Brian. Used to claw at him, used to punch him multiple times. Many times he would have scratch and claw marks all over him. But that was the first time you got punched. I guess you would be scared if that would happen. That's why you were terrified when his sister finally beat you up, because she found out you were beating him up. It seems like for years, she's been able to physically abuse anyone she wants and yell at them, and then nothing comes back at her. And then when it comes back at her, it is, oh my gosh, I am in fear for my life. I've never done anything in my entire life. Why is this person coming after me? Meanwhile, that person is covered in bruises and scratch marks. And literally, he said in one of his affidavits of like, Sarah hits me all the time. What am I supposed to do? And they said, call the police. He said, I will not call the police on her. He also could not call the police on her because he didn't have a phone. or a phone with cellular service. Plus, a man who has exhibited violence as a response is highly unlikely to call the police, as they know they would be calling the police on themselves. Sarah didn't figure that out, that she would call the police on herself as well. She just had the story. She got there first. He was never expecting it, yada, 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 and he never cooperated. If he chose to cooperate and told his story every single time, odds are they both would have got arrested more times than not. But because he never told his side and never pushed back, it was only her story that soon after just falls apart and completely changes. Wow, that was the first date. Okay.
I expect that you're going to hear that Mr. Torres is an alcoholic. I expect you may hear his high score on his blood alcohol level was a 342 once when he got treated at the hospital. This is a man who has serious alcohol problems, and I expect you're going to hear about that. Despite that first date, and this is going to tie into some other things that I expect could possibly come in. Despite that first date, despite at that point in time of this first date not having a relationship, emotional ties, and the things that come along with a relationship that make it harder to break off a relationship, it's one thing to have a bad first date. It's another thing to end a 25-year marriage. Despite that first date, there's a second and a third. Now, these days are at bars, and there's nothing wrong with that. And it just typically ends up, she's going to tell you, I suspect, or you're going to hear that she said, one way or another. It's one thing or the other. Like, I ask a dude for a cigarette, Mr. Torres flips out, and I'm going to pay the price. Just things like that. And you're going to hear and potentially see, yes, there were injuries that the defendant is going to attribute to the victim causing her. Black eyes, cuts in the face, perhaps from the curtain rod incident that was mentioned in the police interview, happened about a month before this. Bloody ear, a stab wound in the leg, which is perhaps described as sword fighting, playing around. Perhaps described as sword fighting, playing around.
I had to play that back because what we have heard about this, she got stabbed in the back of the leg and she had to go to the hospital all these times for whatever reason. Melissa said, well, first Brian said that she got stabbed in the back of the leg with a steak knife. Melissa said that she heard there was an argument or a fight outside and there was like a broken wine glass that got used as that instrument that made that scar or what have you. And now she's describing it as sword fighting and playing around. Sword fighting with knives and playing around? Nope. Red flags are going off. I'm going to go into conspiracy land. I'm just trying to tease this out and think as we go. She doesn't give stories unless it's a minimization, right? She doesn't include herself in stories unless she's minimizing it. If he stabbed her in the leg, I do not see any world where she would say that she was involved with sword fighting and it was just playing and then he viciously attacked me by stabbing me in the back of the leg. I don't know. For me, it sounds like they both went at each other with knives. If I were to play it out in how I think it most likely happened, some argument blow up, she picks up a knife and threatens him with it. It sounds very much like something she would do. His form of abuse has seemed to be more physical in terms of literally just like attacks, hits, pushes, shoves, what have you. It doesn't, to my understanding, I haven't heard him grabbing a weapon. Sarah has been known to grab things, as we see with the bat. So I'm not surprised if she would grab a knife and come after him, and then he grabs a knife, and then maybe that is like a sword fighting. Maybe they do think they're playing. Maybe she's drunk and coming at him with a knife being half serious, half not. It could be anything, all of them, and anything in between. But phrasing getting stabbed in the back of the leg as sword fighting and playing. Again, she always has to say, we were just playing around, to cover up the violence. We were just playing around. Nothing was serious. I imagine if she was asked to explain the strangulation, she's going to say, we were just playing around, and then he got tripped on the steps, and then my hands just slipped around them and put black marks on them because they were gripping so tight. It's just any time she needs an excuse or a way out, it's we were playing. Whenever it's her being violent, we were playing. Whenever it's him being violent, he was trying to kill me. Okay. At a certain point, if I'm the jury, I'm just going to laugh.
But nonetheless, I suspect you're going to hear and see a lot about their past history. And at the end, if this occurs, if this comes in, the state is going to have the opportunity to take lead of the tour in this room labeled the defendant and the victim's past history. And I'm not going to go into that now. If this all comes to fruit, the fruit blooms on the tree during the trial, we'll discuss it at the end where it's more appropriate.
That should be where you are waiting to talk about it now. You should not be bringing it up now. You should have waited to tie it in at the end. Right now, this is all what ifs, what ifs, what ifs. What if they don't go down this path? I mean, they have to. There's no other option. But what if they didn't? You needed to wait to see what they did. You needed to give them a little umbrella of expect to hear lies, and then we'll tell you all their lies later. And then get out of there, because you don't want the last thing for the jury to think about after your opening statements is George is a bad person. She's going to tell you George is a bad person. You want to leave them with the impression of who she is, the defendant, not who he is, the victim.
But I'm asking you to not rush to judgment until you hear all of the evidence in the case. And then apply whether or not these past instances have anything to do with what happened on February 23rd. Now, like a home inspector, there are experts to come in and kind of help walk everybody through this room labeled the defendant and the victim's past relationship. I suspect there's a chance we may hear from some experts, psychologists and psychiatrists, about battered spouse syndrome. The state is not challenging in any way that battered spouse syndrome exists. It's well recognized. The experts will tell you all about it. Not disputing that at all. But there's some things that we would hope that you pay attention to during all the testimony, if there is any, about this subject matter. One is that it's not actually a recognized diagnosis in the Bible that they use in mental health called the DSM-5-TR. Diagnostic Statistical Manual, version 5, and I think it's text revision, something like that.
Yeah, that is the DSM-5-TR, DSM-5 text revision. That is the most up-to-date DSM-5 that people follow. However, I believe their doctor is using the older DSM-5, not text revised, which did acknowledge battered spouse. It didn't give a lot of credence or weight to it, but it did acknowledge it. And now this updated version does not. So, like I said, I thought that the state's expert would be focusing on the DSM-5-TR, while the defense's expert will be focusing on the DSM-5, which, you know, is what they're going to use during cross-examination to just say, didn't you use the wrong one? Didn't you use the wrong one? Didn't you use the wrong one? And she's going to be like, yes, but, yes, but, yes, but.
What it is, and what they describe it as, is kind of a component of post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. But because it's not actually in the book, it's like a recipe book. It's like our statute books for lawyers. You go into this book and say you have a particular disorder or diagnosis. It'll say, well, all of us agree that it needs these three elements, like elements of crime. Some of these elements have to be prevalent for a certain amount of time, so on and so forth. You imagine it's a cookbook. gives you the recipe for a diagnosis.
That is low-key a terrible way to describe the DSM-5-TR. It is not a cookbook of recipes. Look it up. This is what it means to be bipolar. This is what it means to have anxiety. This is what it means to be schizophrenic. You know, all of these things are not cookbook recipes. It's like a map. It tells you how to get there. It shows you all the different paths. It's meant to be interpreted. It's a guidebook. It's literally a manual. It's not a recipe. And the only reason I'm bringing that out because it makes mental health conditions sound like point A, point B, point C. If you have this symptom, if you have that symptom, and you have that symptom, then you have the diagnosis, when that's not true. Mental health develops, it evolves, it shows itself in different ways. The DSM-5-TR is basically just there to help you reframe what you are seeing in your client before you, or in your patient, whoever. It helps you narrow things down as to, based off of what you're presenting and what we can see and the patterns in your life and what you're telling me, these labels more likely than not fit you at this moment, but that could evolve. As we find out more about you, as you find out more about yourself, it could be recontextualizing past behaviors, certain symptomology, and then that can inform your treatment schedule and the best path and course of action for your therapy, treatment, or what have you. Anything dealing with mental health, nothing is certain. Nothing is set in stone. It is all malleable and up to interpretation and up to exemption and unique exceptions and circumstances because we are all unique. We have not all lived all of the experiences life has to offer, thus we cannot map it out perfectly nor put together a recipe of this is what this condition is. And if you just meet all of these, this is what you have. I know, sorry, it's a tangent, but it's a little irksome. That's not what it is. It's not a recipe book. But I get what he's going for, and the root, the spirit of the message is correct. And it sounds like Linda agrees.
But because it's not in the cookbook, you may get some disagreement about what it means between the experts, because it's kind of like grandma's recipe handed down from generation to generation without being right. But what I expect you'll hear is, it's important for people who don't have experience in certain abusive relationships that are violent to understand the control that can be exerted over on an intimate partner by the other one, isolation, psychological violence, emotional violence, physical violence, sexual violence, which I suspect will be described for you as well by the defendant.
And now we're throwing in sexual violence. I'm not saying anything one way or the other, but she has not brought this up at all in years. And you mean to tell me when she's facing life in prison and she has said everything negative about him imaginable, brought up any time he said anything bad to her, called her a bad mother, hit her, did all this, did all that, and never once brought up that he assaulted her? I don't believe that whatsoever. Actually, I don't know. I'm on the fence. I don't believe it as what she is going to paint on the stand, because she would have 100% brought this up. She would have either called the police or brought it up in some manner. She had no issue telling everyone everything, and not one time, to our understanding, not a single person has said she has claimed SA. She claimed SA against his friend, like his friend in the complex. She had no problem yelling out in front of them, yelling in front of the girlfriend that she did this, and that ultimately broke up the relationship between George and that friend. But she never once did that about George. Does that make sense to anyone? I'll let you decide.
Perpetrated on her by the decedent. You will hear about all this. And what it ties into at the end of the day, after we've talked about this during jury selection, is if there is a self-defense instruction read to you, this is to help you understand what an objective and reasonable person in the circumstances would do. Because years ago, we've gotten better as a society, but years ago when this was first being researched, the question would be, well, why don't you leave? And battered spouse syndrome and the testimony from these experts help explain those things to people. Well, it's not that easy. You got to look at what's going on in the relationship, the isolation, control, so on and so forth. And that explains why you wouldn't leave. Well, now, but turning to the facts of our case, what you're going to decide the facts are is ordinary, objective, reasonable person in those circumstances taking those actions if you get a self-defense instruction as part of that. That's what it's used for. It's not used for explaining the subjective beliefs that one holds. What you will also hear about these things is, just like any other doctor or any expert, like a home inspector. If a home inspector's report was based solely on the person who's trying to sell the house, what
Home inspector report trying to sell a house. Mr. J, where are we now? You have gotten lost inside of a metaphor, inside of a metaphor, inside of a metaphor. You had a good opening. Why are you still talking? Things I tell myself every day. Cut it out. Go sit down. Every minute more is just like plummeting down. It's all this what if, if you see this, if you see that, if you see this, if you see that. But you were just telling them the evidence will show. Now we're at if. We need to go back to will and then sit down.
they say about the house. Great shape. I rewired the entire thing. Brand new JVC pipes. This sucker's good to go. I'm afraid of it 600,000. You're not going to take that home inspector's report unless they lift the hood, take the tires, do all the things that the Fox on Carfax does. You want an expert to get reliable information. An expert's opinion is only as good as the information that he or she relies on. They will say, yeah, you gotta take into account the credibility of the person who's giving you the story, even if it's the patient or the client that is saying all these things happen to her. You got to find corroborative information. You got to check reliability, particularly in circumstances that we discussed in the case. So another thing that they're going to tell you is just because there's a bunch of violent nonsense going on between two intimate partners doesn't mean that spouse syndrome applies. Some people can go home and fight like cats and dogs. And that's just their day, and they get over it. They live their life and fight another day. Their cycle just spins like that. So just because you hear about those things, what the experts will tell you, it doesn't mean that it necessarily applies. If this testimony comes in, I expect that Dr. Harper will say that it applies to Ms. Boone. But we'll talk to her about what she relied upon to make that conclusion. We'll talk to her about some other things and take that journey together to get there. But at the end of the day, after you hear all of the evidence in this case, particularly straight from the horse's mouth to the video, where you don't have to rely upon the credibility of anything other than your own two eyes and your own two ears, the state admits that you're going to return a guilty verdict for second-degree murder. What the evidence is going to show is that the defendant killed Mr. Torres because she decided he deserved it. Not because the evidence will show an objective, reasonable person in her circumstances needed to. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. J. Any opening remarks by the defense?
All right, so that was Mr. J's opening. Wow. I thought it was really good overall until we got to the end. After he said, "That's our case," great. Loved it. Strong B+. Once he kept going, we're in B-, C+C range. Cause wow. I don't think he shot himself in the foot or that anything will actually detract from the overall result. It's just you had such a very clean, methodical, and put together presentation, and then it kind of just went off the rails at the end. And I know it's because, and we heard it in the past few hearings, that he was worried about all of these last minute things the defense was putting in, and how he would have to keep altering his opening statement and this and that. And we see that this is the alteration. Everything else seemed like it was pretty set in stone and had a good rhythm to it. This last part seemed like a Hail Mary of, you might hear this. I don't know why he was so worried about the defense relying on this. Like, yeah, they're going to try, and they're going to try to get into it, but it's not going to be as impactful as he was prepping it to be. Making it seem like, okay, I know this is going to sway your opinion. It started to sound like a defense opening statement towards the end. Make sure you see all the evidence. I know things might look this way, but it will look that way by the end. We were already on board. But that's okay. That's okay. Overall, still good, still effective, have some really good points. Filled in a lot of the timeline with some even more horrific details. Just wow. And the trial is zooming by. Like, I'm releasing this on a Monday. It started on Friday officially, and we're almost done. Miss Paulsen is set to testify tomorrow. That is bananas to me. But also, no, it's not, because all of her lawyers in the past, and Mr. Cacciatore, said they wouldn't need more than 3 days to put on their cases respectively, so they only need a week to pull this off. And they were absolutely right. The evidence is so damning against her that it really is this quick. Boom, boom, boom. They have people on the stand, they get the information they want, they get out of there. And the defense isn't crossing a bunch of people because it would not help them if they did. They would just get more details, which then on redirect they can go further into and really just expand upon and open up any holes that they could have tried to poke. So the defense is playing it smart by only strategically cross-examining people, and the prosecution is playing it really smart by just running through these witnesses and not getting into too much, because in cross-examination you can only go after what was brought up on direct, and if direct doesn't bring up something you really want to get into, you can't do it. So they are getting exactly the answers they want, and then they are getting out. Very smart move. Very effective as well. So this trial, which I was slated for 3 weeks, mentally I had prepared to have things finished by then, and it looks like the trial might be finished this week. So videos will come out when they come out. They will cover whatever they cover when they cover them, but there's still a lot for us to break down out of this trial, and there will be a lot to break down post-trial. Just wow. I'm not doing the defense's opening statements. I'm going to cut it right now, and then I'll do that in another video if I feel like it. I feel like the prosecution's opening statement was a little more powerful. The defense's is just, lies and reaches. It's not really impactful. It's not really strategically done in a way that is going to make a difference, I don't think. Mr. Owens doesn't do a terrible job, but there's no real way you could do a good job with the facts that you have. But what did come out in trial today was the second part of the police interview inside the car. So I already did a video on the police interview that was inside the car, and then it just randomly cuts out of nowhere. And it's because Chelsea's recorder was full, and so they had to get another recorder, and then they picked up where they left off. We never actually heard that picked up where they left off part. And then hearing it during trial today, I was like, wow, I need to react to this. I have thoughts, feelings, opinions, things I didn't know, things that make more sense in the interrogation that the detectives brought up but didn't quite fit, because I'm like, I don't remember her saying that in the interview, but maybe she said it beforehand or afterhand or afterward, who knows. But now we know it was all contained in this second recording. which wasn't as short as I thought it would be. It was a healthy length. So I just have this feeling, I think I want to cover that one next, just to be like, what was this? But yeah, we are in the thralls of it in this Sarah suitcase mess of a trial that will hopefully end in a life sentence. Kranek taking all of this in, now that he's seen the interrogation and he's seeing all the evidence put together, he's taking notes non-stop, because all of those notes, everything that he takes in is going to factor into his sentencing. And he's going to need to justify whatever sentence he lays down, and he honestly has more than enough evidence to justify any sentence, honestly. If for some reason he wanted to throw her a bone, give her like 40 years or something, or 20 or some, I mean 22 and a half, if he wanted to give her 30 years or something, I don't think he would, because there are no mitigating factors here. Like zero. Like not even a single one. She has a criminal history. She has been violent. This was depraved. This was hate-filled, inspired. She could have stopped at any moment. It was prolonged over a long period of time. She acknowledged what she was doing was wrong. She acknowledged that she did it. She acknowledged, well, she didn't acknowledge what she was doing was wrong. She knew what she was doing was wrong because he was telling her it was. He was telling her, I can't breathe and I need help, and she acknowledged it. These are all aggravating factors. So, whatever sentence she gets, she earned, and she got it herself. Although she will spend the rest of her life blaming it on everyone else. Definitely going to go after the lawyers after this, because that's what she does. She's not appreciative of any help or anything that is provided for her is an expectation. And if that expectation doesn't get her to her broader goal, then that was a failure, and it's your fault for not making me look like not a murderer, even though I'm showing you I am by recording it. But yeah, I think that is it for this video. It's been a bit of a ramble. Thank you all for being patient with me, and I'm hoping to get more videos out soon. It's been a while, so hope you enjoy. And if you did, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, dislike if you're feeling it. Until next time.
Thank you all.